Hello and welcome to Maiden, Matriarch with me, Louise. I got a chance this week to speak to Claire Lehmann, the journalist, founder of Quillette magazine, columnist at the Australian newspaper. We were both at the ARC conference and got the opportunity to speak in one of their little podcasting booths. We covered Me Too, age gap discourse, blank slatism when it comes to sex differences, the gender pay gap, whether or not mothers should get tax breaks or payments from the government, what the right age to get married is, and also what's been going on with academia, particularly following the 7th of October attacks, and whether academia can ever be salvaged. This is a free one this week. It's going to be available also on the ARC podcast channel, so there's nothing behind the paywall. But for all of the other back catalogue, the bonus episodes, the chat community, all of that, you can go to louiseperry.substack.com. Enjoy. I've always suspected that a big part of the reason why Me Too happened and why all the kind of sexual assault on campus stuff happened. I actually wrote a piece for Quillette very early on in my writing career, partly about campus sexual assault. You wouldn't remember because it was so long ago. Like, the great irony of the campus sexual assault stuff is that actually women who go to university are slightly less at risk than women who don't.
Yeah.
Which is just for demographic reasons. It's just because of being generally wealthier and from certain ethnic minorities and so on. But my suspicion is that a lot of what's going on with that stuff, it's not necessarily to do with like criminal behavior on campus. It's to do with bad sexual behavior on campus.
Or unethical behavior.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And these young women don't really have any way of articulating their complaint.
Yeah.
Except in kind of legal terms.
Legalistic terms. Yeah. And consent has been inflated as a concept to cover all aspects of sexual activity, whereas in the past we used to use moralistic language.
Right.
So if you were a predator, well, I mean, a predator sounds like a criminal, but you could have been a cad.
Yeah.
Or even back in my day, it was you could be a player.
Right. Yeah.
Which is the same as being a cad. But yeah, I think you're right that there's a lot of frustration and resentment, and one of the only socially acceptable channels for women to vent that frustration is through complaints about sexual assault. But perhaps the resentment isn't really about sexual assault. Perhaps it's about exploitative sexual behavior on behalf of men.
Yeah. And there isn't, because I think a lot of these young women who are raised on the sort of sex positive ideology, they do not feel comfortable using that moralistic language.
Right. Yeah.
They're not going to use a word like chivalry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or talk about being gentlemanly or any of that. Like, that's so possibly old fashioned. They just wouldn't say it.
Do you think you can be sex positive whilst also being moralistic at the same time?
Well, the funny thing is, right, that it does often end up being like age gap discourse.
Yeah.
Right. Where sex positive people will be very, very condemnatory of age gaps of more than 5 years.
So who are we talking about when we talk about sex positive people?
So
I'm thinking of Camille Paglia.
Oh, well, I don't know. No, I don't know.
And I doubt she's
I think she's her own
genre.
She's her own category. I'm thinking more of sort of mainstream campus kind of like pro BDSM, pro sex work, whatever.
Okay.
But also often actually quite, I think sometimes quite weirdly moralistic in other ways, which is unexpected.
Yeah.
Like, and with consent, anything goes. Sex work should be completely legalized, yada yada.
Yeah.
But Leonardo DiCaprio is like, must be absolutely condemned for having relationships with women in their 20s.
Yeah. So it's sex positive but not male sexuality positive. Because if you accept the reality of male sexuality, you are going to accept that men prefer young fertile mates and they prefer variety, and that's just part of it. So it's
interesting.
Asymmetrical sex positivity.
Well, I think they would say no because they don't think that there's such a thing as innate male and female sexuality.
Yeah, well, they're wrong.
Oh, yeah. But I guess they would say it's not that they're opposed to male sexuality per se. Although they probably actually I think they think it was quite cool if there was an older woman who was behaving like Leonardo DiCaprio does with younger men.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
asymmetry persists.
Yeah, I like your thesis that, well, I mean, you can sum up your thesis better, that the sexual revolution has been a mistake. I wouldn't go so far as agreeing that I think the sexual revolution has been a mistake, but what I have been opposed to is this denial of human nature, this blank slateism, this denial that men and women have different natures, particularly when it comes to sexual behavior. And I think that if we continue to deny human behavior and have these the lack of norms, the breakdown of norms, that leads to misery. However, if women and young men have the knowledge to be able to understand their own psychology and behavior, then they're more equipped to handle this sort of Wild West environment.
Thank you so much for watching that episode of Maiden, Mother, Matriarch, and for all of your support. It means an enormous amount for the growth of the show. If you want to hear bonus content, an extra 20, 30 minutes of conversation with the guest, maybe a little bit more personal, a little bit less filtered, then you can go to my Substack at louiseperry.substack.com, where you can sign up for extended episodes and also bonus episodes. And you can also access our chat community. You can also support the show by subscribing on YouTube or subscribing wherever you get your podcasts, and rating and reviewing on Apple Podcasts is also really great for encouraging other people to give the show a try. Please also spread the word, tell people that you know who you think might like it to give it a shot. The word of mouth effect is really valuable, so we'd really appreciate it. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening, watching, and supporting what we're doing.